normally send a little intro about myself, which John knows because this is how he had to introduce me at the social media week, and it says, Gina is passionate about entrepreneurship, having failed several times in business since the age of 16. I was kind of hoping that you would use that one, because on one hand it's true, and also it kind of lowers the expectations. But you kind of gave me a really good intro, so thank you for that. So hopefully I can deliver today. First of all, I'm not also a professional speaker, but I do like to talk quite a lot. In fact, it got me in trouble a lot in school. So my teacher said that Gina would do well if she talked less. But actually, this is what I do for a living now, so he was completely wrong. So what I want to talk about a little bit today is about some of the experiences that I went through. It's a bit of an unusual presentation because I normally talk about networking and community and entrepreneurship, but because of all the International Women's Day events and everything, I'm talking tomorrow to 600 12 to 17-year-olds, and I'm supposed to inspire them. So I was thinking, oh, what could I do to inspire them? And a few of my sort of close friends and business associates have said, why don't you share your story? And I don't really share that part of my story because it's not normally relevant in the actual business world, but I guess some of it is a little bit relevant, so I'm going to test it out on you guys today. Slightly different version. This is like the grown-up version. First of all, thank you. I keep saying first of all about 10 times. Not first of all. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited and nervous. I'm surprised that everyone wants to hear about this, but really honoured that you actually wanted to invite me to hear about my randomness. This was me when Atul invited me. Very excited. And then, of course, the reality that LinkedIn people wanted me to come and talk to them sunk in, and I was a bit more like, so I was having this moment of panic. I might have to stick to my notes, otherwise I might completely forget what I'm supposed to say. But I wondered why I was panicking, because you all seem like really great people, and Atul was really nice, and I met him, and I was having this moment of panic. And so I started thinking about why was I so afraid? And thinking about fear, I mean, we're all afraid every day. Like, we wake up in the morning, we're like, oh my God, I've overslept. Oh my God, I haven't done this deadline. Oh, I've forgotten this. I haven't got enough money for this. Every day we're all afraid. And what it all comes down to, I guess, is that we're afraid to fail. Because failure is scary. I think that's probably pretty much what most people are afraid of in general in life. So I just wanted to invite everyone to think a little bit about what failure actually means, because I've had a lot of failure in my life, and I guess even though I get scared to do things, I'm a little bit mad. People think I'm a bit mad because I step up to doing things that probably most people wouldn't, and I think it's probably because I've failed so much. So it hardens you a little bit to failure and fear of failure. So I'm going to share a little bit about some of my failures. So when I was 16 years old, I lived in the Philippines. I was actually brought up in the UK, but I moved back to the Philippines because my parents, looking back, I realise now that they were quite entrepreneurial. During the UK recession, decided that they would relocate to the Philippines, where my mum is originally from, and become pig farmers. Now, they have no pig farming experience, but for some weird reason, they thought it would be a good business to do. I was pretty young, so the enormity of it all didn't really occur to me at the time. So we went back to the Philippines and we set up this pig farm, which was pretty cool, and I loved it actually. I loved the rural life. I loved learning about pig farming. I was very much already hands-on in the business and I really enjoyed it. However, we were dealt a little bit of a bad hand, because after we relocated and started to establish our business, and if anyone remembers Mount Pinatubo in 1991, it actually blew up our business, and we were about 11 miles, I think, away from Mount Pinatubo at the time. So it was pretty difficult, because what happened was ash came down and it flattened, literally flattened businesses and houses. My parents were in the UK because they'd gone back, and I was sort of overseeing the business, and I'd lost complete communication with them. So I was stuck in this rural village with a volcano blowing up, and a business to run without my parents. And so that was a bit of a challenge at the age of 16. But actually we were pretty fortunate at the time, because although all of this was happening, we were on a high part of land. And unfortunately what was happening is the mud flows were coming down from the mountains, and they were actually just burying towns all around us. So we survived just about, and once I got back into communication with my parents, I decided to encourage them that we could actually get the business back on track. And so we did. So we rebuilt everything. Everyone was digging their houses out of the ground, literally. It was a really incredible time. Actually, I took a lot of video footage at the time, which I haven't even revisited, so I think I might dig that back out again. Because it's been a long time since I've talked about this. In fact, I've never really talked about it. So we rebuilt the business, and literally I was there in school and doing this, and I had to cross, this is a spin-off story, but in order to get to school, I had to cross a river, and the river, if it rained heavily, there would be mud flows coming down. And so the bridges wouldn't actually remain. So I had to cross the river in the bucket of a payloader. You know, the digger things. So what they would do is the payloader would come, and the bucket would come down, and we would the students would get in and hold on to like the bucket of the payload, and then they would actually cross us over the river, and that was the only way that you could cross, because it was too dangerous, because, you know, cars and everything would get swept away if the mud flows came down. I was really young, so I didn't really understand the enormity of all of this craziness that was going on. So anyway, the business failed. I could not save the business. I tried. I used to do a lot of negotiating with like local farmers and the butchers to buy the meats, and we also had to obviously buy in food stock for the animals that we had. And what was happening was, because we were in this island now, nobody wanted to cross the river to come in to deliver anything, and nobody wanted to cross the river to come and buy anything. So we were having like really, really overpriced feed coming in, and then really, really low-priced meat going out. So it was just failing. So at the age of 17, I dropped out of college. I was actually studying to be a vet, even though I was doing a lot of the veterinary stuff already with the vet in the farm. So I was kind of already wanting to drop out, because I was really bored with the idea of looking up in a book how to dissect a frog when I was already castrating piglets every day. Sorry, man. This is streaming.
Thank you for that.
Sorry. Always after I say it, I realise I shouldn't have said it. So anyway, you know, that was the last straw. So I dropped out of college. But the thing is I really felt that failure. I felt at 16 or 17 years old that I didn't save the business. So instead of going back to the Philippines, back to England to my parents, I actually ran away, and I lived in slums for a year, because I ran out of everything that I had, like all my jewellery, my teen jewellery and my cameras and all the stuff that you have when you're a privileged teen in the third world. I'd actually got rid of, and I just lived in slums, and eventually it all ran out, because I didn't really know how to make money in this world. And actually I lived for a year and managed to survive pretty much on the goodness of the community around me, people helping me just get through. Like I didn't even know how to pump water. I was pumping water to drink, and I was cooking rice on fire. And you know, there was an old lady who took me in, and I was renting a room from her, and she was basically teaching me how to wash my clothes by hand and stuff like that. So actually at the time, it was not that bad a time. It was actually a very strange time, looking back, but it just kind of happened like that. But eventually I got really ill, because I was actually starving, and I got typhoid fever, so I nearly died. So eventually I reached back out to my parents, who of course were so happy to hear from me, and they never actually pushed me away, but it was just my own mindset that I felt ashamed that I hadn't managed to save the business. So I went back to the UK. And that was kind of a strange life, because I'd been in the Philippines for quite a lot of my sort of adult teen life, and I didn't really know anything about the UK anymore, the culture. So I was sitting on the plane, and I thought, well, now what am I going to do? Because I now have like no anything, friends, contacts, knowledge of where I'm going. And I was watching the stewardesses, and I thought, I know, I'll be a stewardess. That's what I'll do. I'll go back to the UK and I'll be a stewardess. So I did. I went back to the UK and I applied. I didn't get through first of all, because I didn't have the right experience and everything else. I went and got the experience that I needed. So I worked in currency exchanges and did whatever I needed to do. And then I kept going back and I got in. So I worked for British Airways as a stewardess. And my life completely turned around. It was a completely different lifestyle. I was swanning around, it was glamorous. It's not that glamorous. It was all like handling garbage and stuff. But it was a great lifestyle, I loved it. And I love people, and I really loved the job itself. Actually, I did it in total for 10 years. And unlike a lot of my colleagues who really loved the lifestyle, which was the staying in nice places, I actually really loved working on the plane, because I just like people. And so I liked to talk to people and find out what they were doing and find out what their story was and why they were traveling. And I loved it. I met a nice man, and we were married. And this is where life threw me another curveball, because everything was going so great in my life. And I got married at 24. We'd been together for, I think, 4 years at least. And so I had a great relationship. But 5 months after we were married, he had a serious car accident and he was brain damaged. So I was 3 months pregnant, and I now had a seriously brain damaged husband that I would have to take care of along with my child, and it was very traumatic. He was in hospital in a coma for a month, and then he started to slowly recover. And when he was discharged from hospital, I was 7 months pregnant, and he was, wheelchair bedridden and couldn't do anything for himself. So I had to care for him. And then it occurred to me at sort of like 25 that was it. I was trapped in this marriage where I had a brain damaged husband and a young baby, and I thought my life was over. And I really did feel trapped because I was being as strong as I possibly could, and everyone kept telling me how strong I was, but in my mind I was thinking, this is my life now. So I managed to kind of accept my fate, and I moved on from the marriage, but I felt that I failed again because I left this marriage, and actually it was not his fault. Fortunately, he's done really well now, and he's really recovered, and we have a great relationship, but he's more like a brother. That's another side of the story. But then I picked myself up and I decided that obviously life has to go on and there was no point in staying in this relationship. So I moved on to a really strange relationship where a wonderful man who's, you'd be pleased to know that I'm still with now, 12 years down the line. We have 3 beautiful boys, 12, 10 and 2. And he basically picked up the pieces. He was a friend of mine and helped me get my life back together. And he's a techie, so we're very entrepreneurial together. So while I was working for BA still and I was on maternity with our second son, we decided that we were going to start a business, just to keep a little bit of cash flow coming through. So we had this radical idea that we would buy laptops from newspapers and then we would refurbish them and then we would sell them on eBay, which was really new then. So we were literally buying these machines, cleaning them up in the garage. I was pregnant, he was going to work, I was customer service and sales. He'd come home in the night, we'd do all these machines. We hired his brother and his brother's friend, and we had like this whole factory going on in our workshop. Following day, I was pregnant like this with the laptops, going to the post office, and we did really well. The only thing is we had no idea what we were doing in terms of business because we were just basically taking the cash and like we had drawers full of cash everywhere in the house because it was just the time when laptops were too expensive for anyone and only the top executives had them, but then they were now upgrading, so they were trying to get rid of these old laptops, so there were so many available and nobody knew where to get them from, so we were shipping out like 10 machines a day at quite a lot of profit. It was crazy. So that was great, we loved that. And then, because I was still flying, so after my maternity I went back part-time flying, I went to the States and I was sitting in a cafe one morning, I think it was New York or LA or one of those, and I saw people on their laptops without anything connected. And I was like, how can that be possible? They're on the internet, and yet there's no internet here, because of course it was like broadband cable and dial-up, wasn't it? And so I picked up this leaflet that said, T-Mobile does Wi-Fi at Starbucks or whatever, and I brought it home and I was like, what is this? There's this thing called Wi-Fi. We need to do this. It's awesome. It's like internet with no wires. Imagine. So my husband, who's a complete techie, started importing all of these, like everything basically to do with Wi-Fi, like routers, antenna, everything from Taiwan or wherever he could get hold of it. So our house was full of these, like some looked like lightsabers, some were round, some were like square. It was really random. So we had babies and nappies and money and cabling everywhere. And literally we were testing it in our house and he was connecting up all these things and I was running down the road with a laptop like this. I'm still connected. So that was great, so we were having so much fun and we loved it. And so anyway, we went to a friend of mine who lived in a residential building and we said, look, do you want this Wi-Fi that we've made up? Because you can have it in your... The friend of mine was actually cabin crew and he was renting with roommates. And do you remember the days when to get a broadband line it took like 30 days and you had to sign up for 3 years or something and it was really expensive. So nobody really wanted to do that. And this building was full of these sort of young professionals that were co-sharing and everything else. And he was like, that's great. So we set him up with Wi-Fi. And then I said, well, why don't you sell it to the whole building? Because, there's obviously other people. So if it reaches them, just sell it for £10 a month. And so we started selling this Wi-Fi in the building. And all of a sudden we had a knock on the door a little while later. And the guy said, hello, are you the ones? Because we had this, it was very professional. We had like pop-up screens saying, welcome to Tip Top Wireless, the wireless of the future. Connected, just ring this number and pay this money at this door number. And you get this ticket and it gives you a month's worth of wireless. So we get this knock at the door, I'd like to buy this wireless. And I was like, oh great, like what number are you from? And he was like, yeah, I'm the customer service manager of the development company. And I was like, no, in trouble. And he said, no, I'm really interested in this because my previous job was actually working for, can't remember who they were called now, but it was a big broadband company. And he said, this is really interesting. Can you set up a demo? So we were like, of course we can. So we set up this demo in the lobby of the building. And I literally brought my cousin, my friend, like everyone. And we hired these plinths and we borrowed everyone's laptops. And we were all dressed up in suits. And my husband dangled a router from my friend's apartment, which was like on the, I think it was like the 7th floor. So we had this router dangling all the way out, and we managed to pick up the wireless in the connect, and we were like connecting it to other routers, so it was like this string of routers. And so we were in the lobby of the building, walking around in our suits like this. Yes, welcome to Tip Top Wireless. We're demonstrating how we're going to unwire your world. And we had people with like wine and cheese and all sorts of things. And all of a sudden, a guy came up to me, and he was in a pinstripe suit, and he said, this looks very interesting. What are you doing? And I said, well, we're demonstrating the latest cutting-edge technology. And I gave him my card, which said Tip Top Wireless, and I'd done it on my own computer. So at the time, I thought it was good, but it must have looked completely not good. And he looked at this card, and I said, are you a resident? And he said, no, I'm the managing director of the development company. I was like, oh, why are you here? And he said, I'm here to meet Cat 5 cabling people, and they've just quoted me £5 million or something to Cat 5 up this building, so I'm very interested in this wireless service that you have to offer. So I was like, oh, well, no problem, you know, call me up whenever and we'll come and have a meeting. So 7 o'clock the following morning, I get a call, bearing in mind we were working out of our garage, but we had very good phone system, which meant that we got a whisper on the phone. So if they dialed this special number, it said, you have a call for wireless sales. So I'd leg it out of the house, away from my screaming babies, and so Tip Top Wireless, how may we help you? He was like, oh yes, this is Ian Dobie, and I'm phoning, I'd like to set up a meeting to talk about the wireless technology. So I was like, sure, when would you like to meet? And he was like, well, I'm flying out later, so how about now? I was like, no problem, we'll be there. I'd never been in a boardroom in my life. So my husband and I went, I only had one suit that I bought like for that special demo. And it was a cheap suit. And we turned up at this office with my briefcase, with my suit, with my cheap business cards. And we were like, yes, this is what we do. This is, I was telling him about how we experimented with all the technology. And he said, I really like the idea of this. I want to put it in all of our buildings. Send me a proposal. And I was like, no problem. And I walked out of the door and I looked at my husband and said, what's the proposal? I literally had to find out what a proposal was, and I googled it, and I downloaded something called the Proposal Pack. It was for web designers, and I had to like completely customize it. But anyway, incredibly, we actually managed to get signed off for this project, and they let us run riot in. All of a sudden, all these plans were coming by courier because they wanted to test it out in this building with 200 units in a posh part of London. And I was sitting on the floor with like plans because I was getting messages from the construction people asking me where to put the cables. And then we were walking around with hard hats with the suit on again, with like these supervisors on the floor saying, would you like the cables down the riser? And I was like, that sounds like a good place to put the cables. Yes, let's do that. No idea. So we were really, really faking it. But the weird thing is, it wasn't that scary. We knew we were out of our depth, but we knew what we were doing in terms of the technology. I mean, nobody else had it. However, this is where it all went a little bit wrong again, because we ran it for 6 months and they wanted it. They wanted to buy it. And I had a model where they would pay for the install, and then they would bundle it into the residential fees, and they would give us £10 a month, and they would charge it for £30 a month, which was the cost of normal broadband. So I thought that was a great model. And I'd really worked hard on this, and I was like, that's safe, everyone wins, it's an awesome model. And then we sat in the boardroom with about 7 directors, I think, including a commercial director who was about 60 years old and really hard-ass, like scary man, asking me questions I didn't know the answer to. And they were like, no, how about lease to purchase? Of course, I had no idea what lease to purchase was. I was just blagging it. And I said, no, you buy it, and then you sell it, and we'll just put it in and manage it, and you just give us a nominal fee. It made sense to me. And it was less risky than like remortgaging my whole house for the amount of money that it cost. Plus, I knew that broadband costs would drop. That's what my fear was. I knew that within a couple of years, the cost would come down, and I worked out that if the cost came down to £10 a month, then we'd lose the money. Unfortunately, we didn't really know to even seek advice. We didn't even know what we didn't know. So we just sat in there, and I was like, this doesn't sound like a good deal to me, does it you? And my husband was like, no. And I was like, it's okay, never mind. Walked out. So we actually walked away from the deal because we thought we were getting a bad deal. And we didn't have a concept of negotiating or commercial agreements or the fact that you could borrow other people's money to pay for it. It was crazy. So I look back now and I'm like, wow, you know, that was one of my biggest fails in business, because that was millions. But we had no idea that it was a big fail at the time. But I look back now and it entertains me, because although it was my biggest fail, it was actually my biggest learning. And that's why I build communities now, because there's no way I'm ever going to get caught out without the expertise that I need on hand, always. So I surround myself with people that know way more than I know, and that's where my passion for community comes in. So, this is arguable, right? Because a lot of people would say, you know, they completely failed in life and all of these things happened. Actually, we almost lost the second business after that, but we managed to turn it around, and that's how we ended up in Singapore. But it's just been a series of near fails and fails. But I've never really seen myself as a failure, because it's subjective, isn't it? I always look at these lessons at the time and in hindsight and think, wow, you know, just as well that didn't happen. Just as well we didn't, I mean, even though we lost that deal, if we'd done the deal that they wanted to do, we would have really been in trouble. So, you know, failure is very subjective. And also, I don't think that I ever fail, because I don't ever give up. I just keep coming back for more punishment. You know, I'm a very optimistic person, and throughout everything, and there's been a lot of other things that have happened that are kind of almost, you know, not really relevant. But you know, this is why my passion is helping entrepreneurs. And Thomas Edison said in this quote up there, that many of life's failures are people who didn't realise how close they were to success. So I live in this kind of state of mind that says, this time next year, you know, this is going to be the one. And I just keep going. And actually, I enjoy the journey as well, because I think the important thing is to enjoy the journey, right? Because you might never get there. So failing is a part of life. And of course, these are all the people that failed miserably many times. I don't know if you know any of these stories, but they failed miserably before they ever became a success. Even Psy from Gangnam Style, he didn't actually come out of the blue. He's been going since, I think, 2001. And he lost all his money, I think, in 2010, couldn't record anything anymore because he just kept getting turned down until this Gangnam Style came out, and now look. But you see, the thing about failure is it's a great teacher, because better than success, actually, because first of all, it teaches you humility. I mean, you realise that actually you're not perfect, and it kind of alleviates a little bit of the pressure. And also it teaches us empathy, because then you realise that nobody's actually perfect. It's not just about you not actually being able to deliver, but everybody's in this situation where we're all afraid and we can all fail. And of course, it makes us stronger. It's the victory baby. I don't know how this kid is going to feel when he grows up. Everywhere. So I guess the question to ponder on is, what does success mean to you? Because as I said earlier, you know, success means something different to everybody. You know, there's so many different ways of measuring success. Means different things to different people. I don't even know if Sai thinks he's a success or if he's actually after something more, but only you can decide. But this is my kind of mantra, I guess, that I live by now, is that to be by yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you into something else is really your greatest accomplishment. Because there's so much pressure, isn't there, all the time, to, even as big brands or as people, or as people within big brands, or as small businesses, there's always so many eyes on you, judging you. But actually, you know, for me, I never wanted to be a leader, and now I am one. I didn't actually originally write the thing that said community leader. Someone wrote my bio, and I was like, don't put community leader. And they were like, you are a community leader. And I was like, well, technically I am, but you know, I kind of ended up in this leadership role. And it was more a case of, you know, when everyone's standing and it's like, who wants to be a leader? Please step forward. And everybody stepped back, and I was the one who didn't step back quickly enough. And so that's kind of what happened to me. But really, I just love entrepreneurship and building communities. And I don't know if you looked at my LinkedIn profile, to apparently sent it out to everyone. There's a lot of stuff in there about what I do, why I do it, and how I do it. But the bit there, which says, and by the way, you know, fun, creativity, and childlike curiosity are fundamental elements of my work ethic. Actually, Amanda and I wrote this together before we came to Singapore. Amanda's my cousin. We were working together in the UK. We wanted to create this awesome company called the Creative Ideas Department, where all we did all day long was drink beer and write down ideas and sell it. It didn't really pay off, but we've taken some of the elements of that creative thinking and used it in here, so it kind of worked out. But you know, I love what I do, but I don't take myself too seriously, and I think that's the biggest gift you can give yourself. Like, if you can just not take yourself too seriously anymore, it takes so much pressure off. And so, you know, authenticity to me is all about freedom. And having been through all of these different things, I mean, our second business was quite an interesting one because we actually became successful in a way because we started selling technology solutions to investment banks. So we had some really cool investment bank clients, but the trouble is it was killing us because we were a small team of 5 and our client portfolio was growing and the clients were growing. And I remember waking up one night and we had one particular client who turned out quite instrumental in us ending up here in Singapore in the end, but I'll backtrack. I remember lying in bed one night and saying to my husband, wow, is this like success? Because this one client has grown and grown and grown and grown, and now 80% of our business was coming from this one client, and we were dying. We had no time, we had no money, even though technically on paper we had money, but we never had it because we were always spending for them and never getting the money back in time. And I remember we were afraid because they were growing so big and we were a small team, and the bigger they got, the more afraid we got about losing the contract. And to the point that my heart every day was like this because I was so afraid if we lost this contract we would lose everything, the business, our home. And I woke up one night and I said to Bobby, I can't live like this anymore. I'm just not happy. We wanted these big clients and now that we have them, I don't want them. And he said, but what are we going to do? And I said, let's just not renew their contract. And he said, but what do you mean? Like that's crazy. Like we'll lose everything. And I said, well, they're probably not going to rehire us anyway, and I just can't go on another day with this fear of losing the contract. So let's just meet with them and tell them that we're not going to renew it. And it wasn't a bluff. I'd actually had enough. And I said, let's tell them that they need to get someone in-house and we'll just hand it all over. And he said, we'll lose everything. And I said, you know what, I actually don't care anymore. We started from a garage with nothing. We can do it all over again. We'll do it differently. And we'll go back to having fun because I can't live with this pressure and I'm not enjoying it. And that wasn't the point of starting this business. So we went in to see the client and we said, okay, you know, it's slightly awkward because we had a really good relationship. We're not going to renew your contract, but, you know, we're not going to mess you about. We'll help you hire an in-house manager. We'll hand over. We'll make it all smooth for you. You know, we really appreciate your business, but we just can't. You're too big for us now. And they said, is there anything we can do? Like, is it more money? What is it? And we were like, no, we've decided. And I walked away, and I'm not kidding you, we had $40 in our bank account. And if we lost the contract, we would have lost everything. We would have been bankrupt. And I was thinking about my staff because we had like three guys with us. And I was thinking, despite everything, I felt liberated. I actually felt so relieved that I felt like I was floating off the ground. And Bobby and I were walking down the street with big grins on our face, and people probably thought they'd won the lottery. But actually it was the complete opposite. We just lost everything. And so the following morning was a bit harsh because the reality had hit, and we were now coming in to tell the staff that they were going to be made redundant. And Bobby's phone rang, and he said, they want to hire me. And I was like, what do you mean? So he went in and they did a quick hire. So they hired him to be the CTO. We retained the contract, so he now became my client. It was quite strange. So basically, we'd actually moved into central London, into Hanover Square, which is a nice part of London, to be near to them so that we could respond quickly. So their office was here, our office was here. I could actually wave to Bobby from my window. So we'd come into work together, he'd go to work, then we'd have lunch together, and then we'd go home, and we retained the contract as well. So that was kind of crazy turnout. But anyway, they relocated him here eventually, and so here we are in Singapore. So after all of that happened, I thought about it and I thought, I really don't want to work like that anymore. I want to make sure that I work in a way that I want. Like, I want to be happy, I want to have fun, I want to do cool things, also I want to make good money. So I came up with this formula. Feel free to reuse it. And I thought, I'm only going to work with nice people. That's important to me. I like nice people. I'm going to work on interesting projects, and I'm only going to earn good money. And if it doesn't meet those three, I'm not going to do it. I'll just say no. So for 6 months, I was like... I was like, okay, 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3 is fine. So basically, I work on this 2 out of 3 model where if it's nice people and good money, or interesting projects and nice people, even if they don't pay me anything, or not very nice people and good money, it's fine. So I just mix and match. Obviously, ideally, it would be all 3. Sometimes I get those. So to me, that's how my authenticity and my commitment to like sticking to these values has helped me be free. And I really do love what I do now. You know, talking about the measure of success, I might not have as much money as some really successful people, however you might define that, but I have time to spend the money that I have, and I work from home, and I spend time with my 3 children, and people say, how do you do it all? It's because I turn down a lot of other stuff, the stuff that doesn't fall under this. And of course, you know, authenticity is quite interesting because it's quite scary to actually practice. So when you start telling people about how you failed and putting up all this stuff, especially social media, just blast it out everywhere. But what I've realised, so when I first got to Singapore, I was a trailing spouse with no business. For the first time in my life, I was like, yes, poolside. And after about, not long, bearing in mind I was 8 months pregnant when we arrived, I was like, wow, this is totally boring. I don't like this. So I was like, I'll do something. I don't know what, I'll do something. So I wanted to create some business cards, and this is how the rock chick thing came up. So I just wanted to create some business cards that had my name on it, but that sounded a bit boring. So I thought, okay, so who am I when I'm not like a business? And I thought, well, I'm an entrepreneur. So I put Gina Romero, entrepreneur, and I thought, well, that sounds a bit boring too. So then I put Gina Romero, rock chick entrepreneur. Because I thought that means I could drink beer anywhere and people won't expect it. But it was actually a complete joke because I was completely unknown in Singapore, I didn't know anyone. But I created a bit of a monster with it because everyone was like, oh, the rock chick entrepreneur. And then I tried to take it away. I like deleted it off everything. I was like, unconventional business thinking sounds better for a consultancy firm. But it's kind of stuck now, so I put it back again. But the weird thing is that I thought that because I wanted to work with small businesses, because my experience of working with big businesses, this has kind of turned it around a little bit for me. My experience of working with big businesses was that they're kind of a bit scary and evil. So I thought that this whole rock chick thing would make big businesses think that I was crazy and put them off. But for some reason it's worked the opposite, and now they keep contacting me and asking me to talk to people. So this is me. That's like one of the few professional photo shoots, because I don't really like pictures taken, in those massive heels that the lady made me wear. And that was what happened 2 seconds after the pose that lasted. It was literally, I don't know how she caught me standing because I didn't stand for long. So, you know, I'm just a bumbling human, energetic, beer drinking, fun loving person with a passion for community and entrepreneurship. That's it. Thank you.